Great. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. My name is Josh Brown, and I work at Shopify with third-party developers. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite parts of the Shopify platform, which is Shopify's Android Buy SDK. So what is the Android Buy SDK? The SDK is a library that mobile developers can use to build commerce into an Android mobile app. And what it allows you to do is set up a client that you can use to securely access Shopify's storefront API. And then you can fetch products and collections into your app. You can let customers sign up. And then, of course, you can also create checkout so that customers can purchase products, add them to cart, and then complete payment for those products. The SDK also includes a sample app that you can look at for examples if you're building your own separate mobile app, or you can take it actually as a basis to build your own mobile app with the sample app. So I was trying out the sample app yesterday, and this is what it looks like in my test shop. Obviously, there's lots of food going on there. You can see here, this is sort of the index screen where you can see a list of different collections in my store, and also some of the products within each collection. So there's a list of collections with products and their images. You can also drill down to view a particular collection and the products inside that collection. And of course, there's also a product detail page where you can see the product title, product description, if there was one, there isn't one for this particular product, and any images that exist for that product. And you can also add the product to cart here. So pretty rich example in the sample app. And the sample app also has the equivalent of a cart page. So if you've used Shopify on the web, you may have seen a cart page that's a bit like this on the website. And you can do something similar in the sample app for Android. So here, the customer would be able to manage their cart, remove products from the cart, or proceed to checkout with Android Pay or the Shopify web checkout. Cool. So some of you may have used version 2 of the Android Buy SDK. We actually just launched a completely new version of the SDK just a couple of weeks ago. And it's based upon Shopify's new GraphQL storefront API. So that kind of begs the question, what is GraphQL? So GraphQL is a query language that reduces the number of HTTP requests that are needed to retrieve data from a shop. It's a lot less data intensive, and that makes it really perfect for building mobile apps, like using the Android Buy SDK. It also provides for server-side search. We're going to talk a bit more about that in a minute, but this is a feature that a lot of folks I know asked for in the previous version of the SDK. So here we can kind of see an example GraphQL query to the Shopify GraphQL API. So on the left-hand side, here you can see the body of the GraphQL request. And here you can see each of the fields that I'm requesting from Shopify to respond back to my app, or in this case, just to GraphQL in this user interface. So I'm saying to Shopify, please provide me with the refund policy for the shop, the body and the title of that refund policy, and then also provide me with one collection, the cover image for that collection and the title, and then also provide me with 5 products sorted by vendor and 5 variants for each of those 5 products, give me the price and the ID of those variants. So I'm asking for a whole lot of information, all associated with each other. And the cool thing with GraphQL is that you can ask in one request for all of that data, and you can ask in one request for all of that data, and it comes back in one request. If you've used the previous version of the SDK, you would know that you would have had to make at least 3 calls for all that data beforehand. So with GraphQL, those 3 network requests are cut down to just one request. And instead of getting all of the data that we didn't need, like the created at date of the product, the published at date of the product, all we're going to get back from GraphQL is the data that we specifically asked for and the fields that we specifically asked for. So really nice for a mobile situation because you're reducing network requests and you're also reducing the amount of data that goes over the app. Cool. So if you're building this app for a client, or maybe you're building it for your own store, there's a few things to think about before you build. One thing you might want to think about if you don't already have an Android app is really whether or not you really have to have an Android app. Maintaining an app can be expensive. There's also a support element to it where users of the app may need help. So you'll want to think about sort of the costs of maintaining an app and the support load before you sort of go ahead and build an app. And if you do build an app, you definitely want to think about how it will fit into your brand. And why will people want to install this app and keep going back to it? Some of the more successful apps that we've seen include other aspects than just shopping in their app. So they'll include things like a game, maybe that makes sense for your brand, or other exclusive content that is specific for your brand that makes sense and will keep customers wanting to install it and keep them returning to your app. Cool, so we have decided we definitely do want to build a mobile app. The first step is to create the mobile buy channel in Shopify. So if you don't already have a Shopify Partners account, you can get one for free at developers.shopify.com. And what this Partners account will allow you to do is create free development stores that you can use for testing out Shopify and for building mobile apps. One of the great things about the mobile buy channel is that it's actually available on every single Shopify plan, including our most basic plan, which is only $9 a month. So once you are ready to go on a paying plan, it's only $9 a month to run a Shopify store with the mobile buy channel. So pretty cool aspect of the mobile buy SDK there. So once you have your store, again, we're going to have to create the mobile buy channel. So sales channels in Shopify, they represent different places where a merchant will be selling their products. A merchant might be selling their products through the online store, or they could have in-person locations under point of sale. And the mobile buy app will be a separate sales channel alongside those different channels where the merchant is already selling. So within our shop, we'll go to the sales channels on the left-hand side of the sidebar, and there's a plus icon. You can tap on that. And here you'll see a list of the different sales channels that you can add to your shop. And one of them will be mobile app. So we're going to tap on add next to mobile app. And then Shopify will provide us with a API key that we'll need for running the mobile buy SDK and integrating with our Android app. Now this key is actually not a secret. If you've used other API keys with Shopify, some of them are protected, must not be shared. This one is safe to include inside of your mobile app. Also on this page, if you're going to use Android Pay, the public key for Android Pay will be there, so you can enable it there, and you can copy the public key and use that later for integrating Android Pay into your app. Great, so if you're installing with Gradle, the build dependencies look like this. So the first one here would be the build dependency that is for the SDK itself. You'll definitely want to have that one. And the second one is just for Android Pay. So if you're not going to use Android Pay, you won't need the second build dependency. Just the first one will be required for you. Cool, so once we've included the build dependency and we've included the SDK in our project, we'll want to set up the GraphClient. And the GraphClient is what's going to allow us to make API calls to Shopify and build those GraphQL requests we were talking about earlier and fetch data back from Shopify. So here we got kind of the simplest example of setting up a GraphClient. The two things that you will need are the shop domain. So this will be the My Shopify subdomain of the store. In my case, Josh Brown at shop.myshopify.com. And then you'll also need the API key that we were looking at earlier. So that key we were looking at in the admin, that's what will go here under access token. And what this client will let us do is it'll let us make those query requests to retrieve data from Shopify, and then also mutation requests to create or modify certain types of data that can be created through the mobile buy SDK. And the GraphClient, it also comes with a few other options. I'm not going to go into the detail of them, but what they allow you to do is include different caching options. So if you want to cache requests coming back from Shopify and check the cache first before you make a network request, those options are available to you. And it's built upon the popular OK HTTP client open source from Square. So if you've used that before, then some of this might be familiar. Great. So once we've got the client, the next step would be to define a query. And this is how we'll be able to build the GraphQL request that we were talking about earlier. In this request, we're going to be fetching data. We're not going to modify anything. It's just a read request. And what we'll be fetching is the privacy policy of my store. And we'll be getting the body of the privacy policy and then also the URL of the policy. So you can see those down at policy query builder.body, policy query builder.url. So this example might look like a lot of code, and it could be, it kind of is. So if you want, you can also use Lambda expressions. So this is kind of a shorter version of the same thing, where it's a bit more concise, and it's a bit easier to read as well. So this is made available in the SDK through Retro Lambda. And the rest of our examples will be as Lambda expressions. Great, and if you wanted to see what the raw GraphQL request looked like, you can do that. This is what it would look like as far as the request body with GraphQL. It would include the privacy policy body and URL, and we're asking for Shopify to provide that back to us. So once we've defined the query using Lambda expressions or otherwise, we can actually make the call to the API. So the first step would be to define the call itself using query graph. So once we've defined the call, then you'll be able to queue a request to the API using enqueue, call out enqueue there. And there's two callbacks, one for on response and one for on failure. You can also set up a retry handler with a fixed retry policy or a exponential backup policy. So that's pretty cool. We're not gonna get into those details here, but there's that retry option there available to you. So the failure callback is for cases where there are a critical error with the request that went out. So for example, if there were network problems, then on failure would be applicable. It would also apply if Shopify itself was down. So if Shopify wasn't available for whatever reason, then you could use on failure to catch that problem. Great, so if you're not familiar with Shopify, just a couple of notes about the data model with Shopify. Products are organized into collections, and each product has one or more product variants. Variants are sort of the lowest, most granular version of the product data, and they include the price of the product and the quantities. So product variants are what we'll be adding to cart later on when we're building a checkout. And another important thing to note is that products can be published to the mobile app channel, or they can be published to other channels as well. And this is important to know because when we were talking about strategy a bit earlier, a lot of times when you're building a mobile app, you might want to have products that are exclusive to the mobile app. So you'll have to install the app to get it. And you might have other products that are available in both the mobile app and the website, or some that are just the website only. So what you'll want to do is make sure that if you're testing this out, you do have some products that are published to the mobile app under sales channels when you load the product in the Shopify admin. And collections in a similar way can be published to the mobile app, or they can be not published to the mobile app. So if you're testing this out and you don't get any products back, definitely double check and make sure that you do have those products published to the mobile app channel. Great, so here's another example of where we're requesting data back from Shopify. In this case, we're calling for a set of collections data and product data. So what we're asking Shopify for here would be to provide us with a maximum of 10 collections. And we're saying provide us with the title of each collection. And then within each collection, provide us with up to 10 of the products. And for each product, give us the title of the product type, and the description. So this is kind of another great example of how you can use GraphQL and the new Android Buy SDK to fetch lots of associated data in one call. Cool, so another feature that was requested quite a bit in previous editions of the SDK was search. And it's really cool because we are able to do that now with the new edition of the Android Buy SDK. So this is a really simple search request here. In this case, I'm just searching products for a query of lime. And what we're saying to Shopify here is it's a lot like the query request we were looking at before, but we just have an argument here for that query. And what we're saying to Shopify is provide us with the title of the products that match to that query. So that was a simple example, but searches actually can be quite more complicated than that with the SDK. So a simple request would be just like we just looked at with Lime. But you can also search on a particular field. So if you don't provide a particular field, then it will search all the different fields of that resource, whether it's products or collections. But you can also search specifically give me products that have a title of bacon burger. So yeah, so you can restrict your search to particular fields as well. You can also do negative matches. So if you want to search for products that do not have a title and a plate of tomatoes, you can do that. And you can also do some pretty cool combination searches. So for example, product type drink and title is tea. You can combine different kinds of searches together. So it's pretty cool in that sense. If you wanted to build a really complicated search into your app, you can now kind of do that using the new version of the SDK. Cool. So far we've been talking a lot about query requests. And query operations allow you to retrieve data from Shopify. But the SDK also supports mutation requests. And what mutations help you with are creating and modifying data in a Shopify store. So only certain kinds of data though. So if you've used REST APIs before, then query requests would correspond to a GET request, and mutations sort of correspond to POST requests or PUT requests, where we're creating an object or maybe we're modifying something. So in this example here, the first step would be we're going to be creating a customer. So if you wanted to integrate a customer sign up into your app, you could do that. And the first step would be to create a customer create input that we're going to be able to hand to the query and create when we send the data to Shopify's API. So if we were allowing customer sign up in our app, a lot of this data would be collected using some kind of text field. So in this case, we would create the customer create input, provide the email address, the first name and last name, and also a password. You can provide other fields as well, like accepts marketing, which says if they want to receive like marketing emails, for example. And this is a pretty exciting aspect of the SDK because the customer database in Shopify is used for all sorts of different things. It's not just a list of customers, but it could also be, it could correspond to a mailing list that the merchant uses. It could be used as a sort of CRM. Merchants use their customer database in all sorts of different ways, and it's also accessible through other channels. So if a customer wants to use the mobile app and then they also want to use the web storefront, you can use customers to make the process really seamless from shopping from the mobile app going over to the web storefront, or even into an in-person store using Shopify Point of Sale. So this is a pretty exciting aspect of the SDK. Once you've defined the customer create input, then you're ready to build the query. And this looks a lot like what we were doing previously with the query operations, but it's a little bit different because we're going to be providing the customer create input that we just created. And again, what we'll be asking for is, once we've created the customer, Shopify would like you to send us back the first name of the customer that was created, and then also the ID. Now, beneath that, you'll also see an area called user errors. And the user errors are really important to understand. What they allow you to do is if there was sort of a validation error when creating a customer, we're saying to Shopify, give us back any validation errors that may have occurred. So for example, if the email address corresponded to a customer that was already registered, Shopify might come back in the user errors and say email address already exists. So you'll be able to use those user errors to provide feedback to the customer and say, user already exists, maybe you already have an account with us. You could log into your existing account instead. So you'll pretty much always want to ask for user errors when you're creating a mutation request, because they often include important data that you'll want to use in terms of validation or other errors that could come back from Shopify that you want to display to the user of your app. Cool. So once we've set up the mutation query, we can queue that using enqueue, just like we did with the query operations earlier. So again, there's an on response and on failure callback. And here you can see we're accessing the user errors. And if again, for example, the email address was already taken, you would see a message there that you could use to provide feedback back to the user of the app. Hey, this email address was already used. You'll have to log into your existing account. Great, and then again, we asked for specific data back from Shopify, which was the ID, and I think the first name. Yep, so those would be the only two fields that we would have available to us to access from the response. Great, so that mutation was one example of mutations. There's a couple other examples. I'm not going to list them all, but the mutation example with customers is a good one. Another one would be resetting passwords. So if a customer wants to reset their password, there's a mutation for that as well. So there's two popular options in terms of checkout for your app. The first one we'll talk about is the web checkout. So each Shopify store comes with a beautiful responsive web checkout that customers can use to complete their purchase and enter their credit card information and finish the checkout. So the simplest approach to building a checkout into your app would be to create the checkout within Shopify and then redirect the customer to the web checkout from to the Shopify's web store. So the way this works is you create the checkout using a mutation. You'll pass up the information that you have. You can provide the email address, the shipping address. You can select a shipping rate. And then what you'll be able to retrieve back is a web checkout URL. And then the customer can go to that web checkout URL. They can be redirected there, and where they can enter their credit card details and finish the payment for their products. And then they'll be able to return back to your app using a special URL parameter that you can set up for that. Cool. So as far as creating the checkout, it's a mutation like we used with creating customers. So again, the first step will be to create the input. In this case, checkout create input. And so in this case, the input is going to ask for a few different things. It'll ask for the most important thing that is required is the line item input. And the line item input is going to ask for a variant ID, and it will ask for the quantity of the products that you want to purchase. So the variant ID is, you'll be able to get that when you're retrieving products. It was available from the responses that we looked at earlier. And you will have to use the variant ID that comes back from the GraphQL API. Rather than, what will work here is, if you're familiar with Shopify's variant IDs from the REST API, those are different. So for these inputs, we're going to be using the product variant IDs from the queries that you're making with the Android Buy SDK. And then the second property there is the quantity that we want to add to checkout. So in this case, we're adding two different variants to the checkout, and we're defining the ID of each variant, and then we're also saying, here's how much we want. We want 5 of the first product, and then 3 of the second one. Cool, so once we've set up the input, the next step is to define the query. And this works a lot like the mutation operation that we looked at earlier with creating customers. You're going to provide the input to the mutation query. And then what we'll do is we'll ask Shopify to provide back a web URL. So in this case, all we'll get back is the web URL, except we're also asking for, again, the user errors. So again, you're always going to want to ask for those user errors just in case there is a validation error that Shopify can tell you about, and you'll be able to use that to provide feedback to the customer. So an example here of a user error would be if the variant had been deleted or wasn't available anymore. You could look at user errors and see, okay, this variant isn't available anymore. We'll be able to finish this checkout, and you can provide that feedback back to the user. Great, and so here you can see where we're queuing the query, and we're making that request to Shopify's API. And then we've got the 2 callbacks again, one for the response and then one for the failure. And again, I want to highlight here that there are two different kinds of errors here. The graph error from the failure callback would correspond with an error that is critical, like when we can't make the request at all, there's a network problem or Shopify is down. And the user errors would correspond to a situation where, for example, it's a validation problem and it's something that the user can fix. So there's a bit of a difference there. Just wanted to highlight that in this mutation. And what we're doing here is we asked for the web URL, so we'll be able to get that web URL here, and then you can redirect the merchant or the customer to that web URL, and they'll be able to go there to finish their purchase. Now, what you can also do here is once you've created a checkout, you can mutate it again, and you can add extra information that maybe you didn't have when you created the checkout. So what you could do here is after you create the checkout, you could ask the customer for their email address and the shipping address inside your app. You can provide those back to Shopify, and then what will happen is Shopify will be able to, you'll be able to go to Shopify and then ask for shipping rates. And then it could take some time because shipping rates can depend on external third-party services, but you'll be able to pull for shipping rates. You'll be once they come back, you'll be able to choose one, and then you can mutate the checkout again. So you can continue updating the checkout as you receive more information from the user that pertains to the checkout. Or you can go straight to the web URL to begin with, if you prefer that, and then the customer can enter their information straight into the web checkout. Cool, so the other super exciting checkout option that's really popular would be Android Pay. It's super exciting for us because we just got Android Pay here in Canada just a couple weeks ago, so very new for us. And again, if you're going to use Android Pay in your app, we do have some helper options there for you. And it is from a separate build dependency that you'll have to include. So there's a separate build dependency for that. And it comes with two different components. There is a PayCart component, which helps with building the Android Pay cart. And then there's also a component for a class for Pay Helper, which helps with a series of different interactions with the Android Pay API. So you can use Pay Helper to check to see if Android Pay is available. You can use it for retrieving the masked wallet with the shipping destination, and then you can also use it for retrieving the full wallet and handling retries in the case of a failure. So the Pay Helper, I'm not going to go into all of the details, but they allow you to go through a series of different interactions with the Android Pay API to finish the Android Pay purchase and complete the transaction. Cool, so there's a few different resources if you are building with the Android Buy SDK. One that I did want to highlight would be our API and Technologies forum. If you have any questions about how to use the API or how to use the SDK, you can join us in the API and Technology forum, and we'll post your questions there, and we'll be able to check it out and help you out. And the SDK is on GitHub, so you can also go there. We welcome contributions, so if you want to add a new feature to the SDK, you're more than welcome to do that. Or if you come across a bug, definitely feel free to open an issue, and we'll be happy to help you out there. And as I mentioned earlier, the SDK also comes with a sample app. So the sample app is under the sample directory of the mobile Buy SDK. And this sample app includes activities and sort of, it's a complete sample app for, it includes checkout, it includes the views that we looked at earlier, and it also includes handling the cart. So the SDK does not include a, the raw SDK does not include a cart option, it just includes a checkout. So the cart would be implemented in your own app, but there's an example of that in the sample app, so you can definitely check that out if you are looking for example for your own app. Awesome, so thanks everyone for joining. At this point, what we can do is if you have any questions about the presentation, definitely feel free to enter them into GoToWebinar, and we'll be able to go through some questions and hopefully answer them for you. Cool. So one question here, does the mobile buy SDK work on the Lite plan? Yeah, it does. So the Lite plan would be the $9 a month plan that I mentioned earlier. So you can use the mobile buy SDK with any Shopify plan, including the $9 a month plan. And you can also use it with development stores. So if you're just testing this out, you want to give it a try, you can open a development store for free from developers.shopify.com, and then you'll be able to test out the SDK and use it in a development store for free. But yeah, with the paying plan, it is $9 a month. Great, and we have a question here about Android Pay. Which payment gateways does it work with? Sure, so Android Pay is compatible with Shopify Payments. So Shopify Payments is a popular gateway on the platform, so Android Pay would be compatible with that. Cool, and if anyone else has questions, definitely feel free to type them into the questions section in GoToWebinar. Awesome, cool. If you have any other questions, definitely feel free to join us inside of the. Definitely feel free to join us inside of the API Technologies Forum that we mentioned earlier. That's on ecommerce.shopify.com. And we have another webinar coming up. If you're interested in front-end development with Shopify, Tiffany C is hosting a webinar called Getting Started with SaaS and Shopify. That'll be on June 29th in 2017. And you can register at shopify.com/partners/blog/partner webinars. So will be a really cool webinar for anyone interested in front-end development with Shopify and CSS pre-processing with Shopify. URL to register is down there at the bottom right. And it'll be a really cool webinar. I'll be there for sure. So definitely check that out. And thank you again, everyone, for joining the webinar.